But I do care about these young teenagers that are in juvenile detention, and these young adults that do suffer from ADD, ADHD, autism spectrum, whatever scale that they're on, and have these disabilities, and, they're not getting the help they need. And that's kind of that's very frightening for me as an educator and a child advocate. I'd like to know your opinion on it.
Yeah, I think that, you're hitting a good point on, the importance of an environment impacting not only mental health, but also behavior. And I think that this is critical not only in juvenile, systems. I actually used to work, prior to being a neuropsychologist, I used to work in the New York foster care placement as an undergrad, and I saw many children that were actually from impoverished neighborhoods or were exposed to different substances, particularly lead and toxins, and also in utero exposure, which I'm seen quite a bit of in Central Florida, particularly when I practiced at Florida Hospital for 5 years. And many of these children are significantly at risk for juvenile detention later in life. And I think that this is an impact of, not only brain changes, but a cycle of either parents that have been in these neighborhoods or communities where there's some level of isolation, a bubble, if you will, and not having mentors. And we have some great programs here in the area, like, Club Esteem, that has been great and has shown wonderful progress and success in showing that when you pair children, how long-term that you can have significant impact on them. I used to work at Circles of Care, and, I saw children that, again, were at risk to go into juvenile detention, but they were in, very neglect or abusive child homes, or there was significant substance abuse or other types of, psychopathology in the home, which made kids act out and then led them to juvenile detention or led them to a crisis stabilization unit. Children of domestic violence, for example. But to get, again, directly to your point about juvenile detention, isolation is not helpful. And then another thing that's important is I was thinking about the school system. There's significant, data now. There's articles that have shown that, detention and even expulsion from school is directly related to being in jail later in life.
Of course it
and
is.
So it's back to the systems in which children live. I really think about systems and how they impact development.
Right.
So, as a child in a home where, when you have certain types of behaviors, what are the expectations? What are the rules? Are there consequences? And most importantly, are there rewards? Are there reinforcers that are exciting that children can thrive or strive for and be motivated by? And in the school system as well, there's a very innovative school. I don't remember exactly the city, but I think it's in Maryland, and they've actually started a yoga program. So when children, are starting to act out or yell, they actually have a yoga room, and they're teaching them coping skills and deep breathing and anger management tools. And they're not isolating them or taking them only to the principal's office. They're giving them coping strategies. And later, they've seen that long-term, these children have had a decrease in this school-wide, actually, has had a decrease in detentions over the last couple years. So I think as we move as collectively as a community, do we want to be, as parents, as educators, as community civilians, more authoritarian type of figures who, come down with rules, or do we want to give children tools, again, as early as possible so that they can cope and have better success? Outside of the jail system, I wanted to get directly more to the populations that I work with that are more medically and neurologically and developmentally involved, and being, kids that have a brain injury, for example, or even something as mild as concussion that are told to be isolated. And that's shown that, that is not successful for recovery. The brain doesn't do well in isolation and in dark, environments, just laying around for days at a time.
I don't believe that isolation for anything, unless you are infected with a contagious disease, really is good, is beneficial for anyone, especially a child or a young adult with, a learning or mental disability. I mean, I think, I know that
early childhood, especially when you think of toddler years and how that impacts, socialization is huge for building language skills like we just talked about, but also socialization is critical to learning problem-solving strategies and negotiation and emotional behavioral regulation.
Right, and socialization is the building blocks for math and algebra and, just every academic benefit to socializing and playing, just playing. Let's go back to our early educators, Maria Montessori, for one. That's my favorite, of course, because I am Montessori certified and educated. And that was, these educators a long time ago. I know because I know how unbelievably educated you are, which I want to get into right after I make my statement. But, Maria Montessori started her program originally for the deficit child, and with children that could not speak or were blind and deaf and had huge mental issues. And that's how she originally started. And when she saw how successful it was, she moved on to the normalized child. And that's how her program, first was in Europe, of course, in Italy, Casa de Bini, and then came over here, to the States and progressed and is now one of the best methods of learning, I feel, in my opinion, that there is. But now I want to talk a little bit about your education. I need for you to tell my listeners a little bit of background about yourself, where you were educated, where you went to school, because I'll tell you why. Because the fact that we have you here in Brevard County is just a little bit unbelievable, because you do come from such a wonderful background. And I want my listeners to know exactly how you came about being a neuropsychologist.
Sure. Thank you so much. So as a neuropsychologist, what that means is that you have to get a doctorate in psychology. And throughout, I always specialized in neuroscience and neuropsychology. And then I did that here at Florida Tech in Melbourne. And that's part of the reason why I relocated here now about 10 years later. I then did my residency in neuropsychology at Emory University in Atlanta. And I also did my 2-year fellowship at Florida Hospital and under the tutelage of Dr. Westervold. And he was one of the presidents of board certification in my field. And then after that, I worked at Florida Hospital and I helped build the inpatient and outpatient neuropsychology services for the epilepsy and neurosurgery program there. And then after that, I worked at Boston Children's Harvard before I just relocated here to Melbourne. So it's been quite a journey, and I've learned a lot and had great mentors as well.
Yes, I know. And you mentioned Club Esteem. Have you ever been there personally?
I have not been there myself, but I actually have plans this summer to take a tour. I have a high school intern, and I've been planning summer tours for her to see what services and programs are here. But I've met with Kim Deffenbach a few times and learned through her the program.
Well, it is such a wonderful program, and I met with the director of Club Esteem, and I happen to know Robert Green, who is their financial, I guess, executive for the program, and he is just so wonderful and just loves Club Esteem and does so much for those children. I've been there. In fact, but the distance was just too great for me living all the way in Vieira, having to travel down there like 3 or 4 times a week because of working full time. But I would love to again kind of get down there and try to help out. She is a wonderful, wonderful person, the director. I forgot her name offhand, but she really just loves those kids, boy, oh boy, and does so much for each of them and for their esteem. And, there's no playing around. These parents have to sign their children in and make sure they're there on time, and there's no playing around. It's not like a daycare or like a community center. It's really is a wonderful program. I recommend everybody to take a tour and give a little help if you can. Put in an hour or 2 of volunteering and help these kids out. It really is a wonderful program. Go ahead, dear. I didn't mean to interrupt.
Oh no, I was just listening to you, but I was going to say that part of the program is really I think its success is based on psychology principles like consistency, as you said, doing consistency, cooperation, and a partnership between the family and the providers, and I think that that's part of what I do here. I believe in clear expectations, consistency, commitment, and working together typically creates a good success for all that are involved.
I agree. Christine, I would like to, I know I introduced you to a couple of people that I know. I would also like for everyone to know how they can get in contact with you. If you can give your web address again and or a phone number so that people can jot it down and know that they can call you to ask you any personal questions. And of course, all of Christine's information will be on my website and fan page. And all of her information is on a blog I just wrote last week. That you can just go to www.eleanorseliteradioshow.com and scroll down to the bottom of the page, and my 2 blogs are there, and all of Christine's information is on there. Christine, also, can you give your web address again, please?
It's www.spacecoastneuropsychology.com, and you can find information there about different disorders and our services like neuropsychological assessment, the concierge care and telehealth. Like I said, we are starting a return to learn concussion program, and I just relocated actually to a larger space, so we're going to start groups in the early fall, about September range. So you can find out there what we're doing and also what's to come.
What's that new address? Is it the 1900 building or no?
It is. It's just on the first floor, and it's handicap accessible, and also has its own bathroom, so it's a little bit more child friendly. And one of the other new things that we're going to be doing is I'm going to be doing educational workshops. I've just applied to be a continuing education provider so that I can have parent workshops, but also workshops for providers to learn more about different disorders or assessment approaches or even treatment techniques that I use.
And I would love to also be a part of that as well. So maybe you and I can get together again, and I would love to come help volunteer, whether it be mentoring or help in educating or possibly doing a little tutoring for your students, because it's very important to me. Children are really important to me, and their health and their well-being. I believe that a lot of children are just pushed to the side, and there's excuses given for them for their parents, because their parents are in such denial about the problems they might really be having, and they don't want to face or deal with that. So yes, please include me also in maybe giving you a helping hand as well.
Sure, thank you so much. And I think the other thing that's important is education. Like I said before, I'm the only neuropsychologist here that really specializes in pediatric with the same, especially with the medically complex children. And, we only have a very small handful of psychologists in this area, and most people are having to travel to Orlando, and it's over an hour away. And therefore, I think that when you're in an underserved community, you haven't had these resources for very long. So, instead of me conceptualizing that only as denial or, people's unwillingness to get the service, I really think that it's partly educating and understanding that, that there is hope. And despite, whatever child or resources that a family has, that there might be some type of treatment or intervention that could be made. Sometimes they're minor changes, right? And they can make a world of difference.
Exactly.
Particular in, children that have, something like ADHD or learning disability that hasn't been diagnosed or it's just kind of budding, if you will, early elementary, kindergarten, first grade, second grade. Talking to someone that's a professional early on might, kind of make a huge change in that path so that things don't become crisis or get overwhelming for that child or for that family.